every one of those things that's bothering him, those stresses, those anxieties, those thoughts, those negative thoughts, write them down and read them back to himself. And then, like, if you try this, you'll see, like, you'll look at it and you'll say, wow, that's really what's bothering me. So basically you've exposed the fears.
Welcome back to another episode of the Peak Performance Life podcast. Today, I am super excited to have William Branum, a highly decorated Navy SEAL veteran who served in the United States military for 26 years. And during his extensive military career, he honed his leadership skills, cultivated a strong mindset, and gained invaluable experience in high-pressure situations as a sniper instructor, leading teams on operation ranging from protecting the interim Iraqi elected officials to direct action missions in Baghdad and Afghanistan, as well as undersea missions that were required to be approved by the President of the United States. And after retiring from the military, William has made it his mission to share the lessons he learned with others as a speaker, author, and business and leadership advisor. He now coaches different CEOs, high-level business owners, and he's going to share his story here with us today. William, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me on here. I'm pretty stoked to be here.
Well, awesome, man. First of all, thank you for your service. Really appreciate having people like you in this country, and would love to get a quick background. Just kind of like, tell us like the short version of your story.
The short version. There's so many versions. I don't even know where to start. I think I would start with, I grew up in a little town outside of Meridian, Mississippi, and I was very poor. And just to kind of let you know, I was like free lunch poor. Kids called me poor white trash kind of poor. That kind of poor, and which didn't say a whole lot, a country bumpkin, all sorts of other things. But I was, heavily involved in the Boy Scouts. I didn't know that I was ADHD either until I was tested at a TBI institute about 2 years before I retired from the SEAL teams. And so I just thought I was dumb. And I learned that, oh, you're actually very smart, but you have zero attention. So that's a tough one. And that could be a tough thing in this interview, because sometimes I'll just start talking about a story and I forget exactly what the question is. I'm sure that I have a point for the question, but I just start rambling on. Let's see. So I was heavily involved in the Boy Scouts. I always knew that I wanted to be part of some sort of elite military organization, although I didn't know what that was until I went to this Boy Scout jamboree. And I met a kid. He was my tent mate, and he was like, "Yeah, when I graduate from from high school, I want to go to the Naval Academy. I want to fly F-14 Tomcats, and I want to be a Navy SEAL." And I was like, "Oh, that all sounds super cool. What's a Navy SEAL?" And so he kind of explained to me what that was, and I was like, "That's cool. I want to do that too." So I came back from that trip, and this was the summer between my 11th and 12th grade of high school, and the Navy recruiter calls my house and asked me if I was interested in joining the Navy. And quite honestly, almost every other man in my family has been in the Navy, and the Navy was not on my to-do list. It was actually the opposite. I'll do anything but join the Navy, but there's a prerequisite for becoming a Navy SEAL, and that's you have to join the Navy. So I joined the Navy, even though I didn't really want to. Or actually I was like, so I went down to the recruiting station. I watched this video about Navy SEALs, and I was like, yeah, that was super cool, super cheesy. Where do I sign? Like, how do I go? And then how do I become a Navy, I go to the Naval Academy and become an F-14 Tomcat pilot also. So I had big aspirations of doing these things, having zero idea of what I was actually getting myself into. So I went to boot camp. I graduated high school. I went to boot camp. I failed the SEAL screening test. That pushed me back, I don't know, a couple of years, almost 3 years before I finally got to go to BUDS, which is basic underwater demolition SEAL training. And one of those things that happened along the way is I took a school to get in better shape. My thought is I'll get in better shape. I'll go take the screening test, then I'll go to BUDS. But because I took that extra school in the Navy, I had 24 months of obligated service to the Navy. So I went and spent my time on a ship in Yokosuka, Japan. And when it was time for me to go to my next duty station, which in my opinion was going to be BUDS, the guy that was in charge of telling me where I was going to go said, yeah, you're not going to go because you remember that school you went to like 2 years ago? That made you too critical to the Navy. So you will never become a Navy SEAL. You'll never do any of that. And I was like, well, what about if I go and I fail? You got me back. He's like, nope, absolutely not. So all I ran into was roadblock after roadblock trying to get to Buds. And then one day we got the word that the chief of naval operations was going to come to our ship in Yokosuka, Japan. He didn't go to any other ship. He came to our ship. And some people were like, you should ask the CNO if he'll let you go. And I was like, okay, what do I have to lose? And just to kind of put in perspective who the CNO is, he is the most senior person in the Navy, the end. The only people more senior to him is the Secretary of Defense and the President of the United States. So he was pretty much top dog. He came to our ship and he gave his vision of the Navy. And he said, all right, does anyone have any questions? And I raised my hand. I was the second guy he called on. And I said, I joined the Navy to become a Navy SEAL. I think I deserve a chance to go. My detailer won't let me go. What do you think? He turns to my commanding officer and he was like, hey, is he a good guy? My commanding officer was, and fortunately I told my CO that I was going to do this. He said, yeah, he was sailor of the quarter this quarter, which is like employee of the month. And he turns back to me. He was like, check, you'll be in the first class after your PRD, which is planned rotational date. 6 weeks later, I'm off to California to SEAL training. And so SEAL training is 6 months long, and it took me a short 13 months to get through that block of training. I got injured a few times. They almost kicked me out because of the injuries, but I had this sob story about if I leave, I may never get to come back, the CNO, blah, blah, whatever. So they let me stay. I got through Hell Week injured because I was like, whatever, dude, I don't care as long as I can pass whatever it is. And then I got, injured again after Hell Week because I was limping on a bad leg. And so because I made it through a major milestone in training, they let me stay for one more class. And so I was like, well, if I don't heal up, no big deal. I'm just going to limp my way the rest of the way through training. Eventually I healed up. I got pretty strong, got to the SEAL teams, had a great career. I got to teach sniper school. I deployed, 7 times to combat, retired in 2018. And then I started a couple of companies. One is Naked Warrior Recovery, which is a CBD company, and the other, another company, which I consider to be a bit of a failure, which was a kind of a consulting company helping companies navigate the military acquisition system. And then I also have about a year and a half ago started a speaking and coaching company, helping, kind of what you talked about in the bio in the intro, is helping leaders turn their employees into teams, and then helping them lead their team like it's a SEAL team. And so really just helping leaders change their mindset, change the way that they think about the way they lead, and helping them become more efficient in what they do.
Awesome. That was a great job. And I definitely, we're going to touch on the CBD stuff as well. I'm sure a lot of people have heard a lot about it. I know there's a lot of confusion in the CBD industry, so I'd like to kind of get your opinion on that. But first, I do want to hear a little bit more about, you have a giveaway, actually, 5sealsecrets.com, the number 5sealsecrets.com. People should go into their email and get your free giveaway. But maybe we can touch on that a little bit here, because you have it's how to build unstoppable self-esteem and resiliency, 5 SEAL secrets. Can we talk about that a little?
Yeah. So, it'll all come together. CBD and everything will kind of be coalesced in this. So when I retired from the SEAL teams, I felt like I had lost my purpose, I lost my mission, and I lost my team. And I had a fair amount of baggage along the way. Some of it was from occupational hazards. Some of it was from not so awesome relationships that I've been a part of. And so I had a lot of noise in my head. And so I would pretty much just drink myself to sleep at night. Glasses and glasses of vodka, turn down the noise, or not really turn it down, but dull it out. And you can't perform at an optimal level of any capacity when you do that. I use the analogy where in one of those Avengers movies where Thanos snaps his fingers and the whole universe, half the universe population vanished, like you're having dinner with your family and then they're gone. Like, what the hell happened? What's going on? That's the way I felt when I left the SEAL teams. And I found many professionals have exactly the same sort of reaction, whether they're professional athletes, they're CEOs, they've grown businesses to billions of dollars and then sold them. And then they're like, what do I do now? I felt exactly the same way. I just felt absolutely lost. And so CBD was a modality that helped turn down the noise in my head. A buddy of mine, this was 2018. When I retired, I was still afraid to try CBD because I was, I'm a child of Nancy Reagan's war on drugs, just say no. and drugs are bad. Okay. South Park, if you will. And, and so I was afraid to try it, although I'd heard a lot of great things about it, and it was still very new in the market. It just became federally legal. And so I was having dinner with a buddy of mine, and he was like, "Oh, I've got some CBD at home." So basically, CBD helped turn down the noise in my head. He gave me a bottle. I used it. And once I got control of this noise in my head, I started thinking about, what do I need to do to that I did in the SEAL teams that made me successful there. Well, maybe I'm sure those same things will make me successful in my new life. You know, I like to say that my transition from the military to civilian life is the hardest military mission I've ever been on, and I'm still on that mission. It's getting easier. It's still not easy, but it's getting easier. And I really think that these 5 SEAL secrets are sort of the catalyst that helped me get where I am today. And so I came up with an acronym, and the acronym is NAKED. And I say, if you want to think like a Navy SEAL, you have to get naked. And so the acronym is, the N stands for never quit. And I don't mean like never quit smoking or drinking or porn or any other sort of vices that you have in your life. I mean, never quit on yourself. Never quit on trying to improve where you are and try to get to an even better level of success that you're at right now. And oftentimes, you know, we can feel very overwhelmed in life if we have like some sort of big audacious goal: start a company, start a relationship, start a family. Whatever it is, I just hiked the Grand Canyon rim to rim to rim, and maybe we can talk about some lessons from that as well. But you know, when you feel overwhelmed in life, I say to create small victories. And what a small victory is basically where you take back a little bit of control when you feel like your life is out of control. And so during Hell Week of SEAL training, you know, you're cold, you're wet, you're miserable, you don't sleep for 5.5 days. But one thing that you do have to look forward to is they feed you 4 times a day. So it doesn't matter how much it sucks, how much you hate carrying that boat around on your head, or how badly you're jackhammering in the surf zone. All you got to do is make it to the next meal, and that's a small victory. So I say, just create small victories until you get to whatever that end goal is. And just, you know, kind of like I just mentioned, the Grand Canyon, we hiked rim to rim to rim, and you know, it was terrible conditions. And a sane person wouldn't have done it. As a matter of fact, a guy that was with us who has done it before, he was like, if I was driving to the Grand Canyon and to do this, and those were the conditions, I would not have done it. But because we had a group, we had like a lot of high performers in the group, we had a guide, we went ahead and did it. And it still took us 25.5 hours to do it. And something else that happened during that event is we saved a kid's life. There was a kid out there on the far end of the canyon. Rangers were not coming to save him. He was soaking wet. He tried to hike, you know, rim to rim, and his friend turned back. He was in basically, if you've ever been down there, the bathrooms or outhouses, they're plywood buildings, and he was basically stripped down to his underwear, you know, getting his wet clothes off of his body, and trying to, you know, survive until someone hopefully showed up. I mean, you're far away from everything. He was far into the canyon. And we showed up, he walked out, and he was basically hypothermic. Had we not shown up, he would be dead right now. And so we wrapped him up in space blankets. We made some like hot chocolate and things like that for him. We got him food. We found the key for the ranger station. We got him into the ranger station. We turned on the heater. We had 2 guys that couldn't make it to the North Rim, so we left those guys there. He got healed up. We got a hold of the ranger station, and they were like, yeah, well, sucks to be him. When he's healthy enough to walk out, we will come and get him. So by the time we got back from the North Rim, he was good enough to walk, and he walked back to Phantom Ranch, and he's good to go. He's alive today. But you know, there was another group that came in behind us, and you know, they were there at the ranger station when we got back from the North Rim, and the guide that they had, he was like, sucks to be that kid. I have no desire to help him. He's not my responsibility. And so it was an interesting like look at humanity, and like we're like, and it was just a group of men from this organization that I also am a part of called Man Made, where we help men become men again. And we go do really hard things. And this was one of those things that we went and did. And thank God that we showed up when we did, because we saved this kid's life and we had a positive impact on him. And so he's also looking for men in his life to figure out how to be a man. He's 18 years old. And so it was, that was a really epic thing. But coming back to kind of the small victories is like when there's only two ways to get out of the canyon. And that's either you walk out or they helicopter you out. And I for sure was having a bit of a pity party, like the last 9 miles to get out of the canyon. And I was feeling sorry for myself. This was like one of the top 5 hardest things I've ever done in my life, to include SEAL training. And what I found towards the end, like the last hour and a half, is when I got up to the snow, I put my crampons on and it was dark, and I just looked at my feet and I took tiny little baby steps, and I called like each little baby step a small victory. And what I found is if I was looking up at the end, like, or I looked up really high, like where other headlamps were, guys that were ahead of me, I would become overwhelmed. But if I just looked at my feet and I just put one foot in front of the other and I took little baby steps and I created small victories along the way, I created momentum and I started moving faster up the canyon, and I eventually caught up to people. But it was because I had to change the way I was thinking and the things that I was doing into the things that I actually teach. Create a small victory, baby steps, baby steps, baby steps, small victory, small victory, small victory. And that's what got me to the end. It wasn't like, oh, look, like every time I looked up, I got overwhelmed. So I just looked back down. I swear I looked 2 feet in front of my feet. And that was the victory that I'm just going 2 more feet, 2 more feet, 2 more feet. And so that was really cool. So a very long answer.
I love that. Just real quick, let me touch on that, because that was a great story. And I love that analogy of just like putting one foot in front of the other, taking baby steps, getting small wins, right? It's like, so many people, they never get started doing things in life, right? Like they think, because they get overwhelmed looking too far out, right? And like, there's another analogy, like you could drive from New York to San Francisco in the fog without ever seeing more than 10 feet ahead of you, or whatever it is, right? It's like, you don't need to be able to know how to, do everything. You just gotta take the next step, take one step at a time. As that relates to people's health, if they're, they might feel overwhelmed that, oh, how am I going to change all these eating habits? I've been eating the same way for 30 years. How am I going to change this now and lose all this weight or do whatever it is? It's like, look, just take one step at a time, one day at a time, one meal at a time, right? Amazing. Yeah. Love it.
Yes. Don't look at the big number. Look at the baby number. Look at the tiniest number. What are the small things you can do to continue to improve your life? So yeah, exactly. So the N is for never quit, and to never quit, the trick is to create small victory. The A is accept failure, because for me, failure has been the biggest teacher of my life. I could do it right 1,000 times and I still won't know the right answer. I won't know what's right and what's wrong. It's not until I really push the envelope and I fail. I took surf lessons once upon a time. I live in Hawaii, so I should be able to surf, but I went to Costa Rica to go to surf school to learn from experts and things like that. And they're like, listen, if you're not falling, you're not trying hard enough. You're not really pushing the envelope. The same thing in SEAL training or on missions, working up to do missions. I only learned, like truly learned, when I messed something up, when I failed at whatever it was, diving, land warfare, whatever the thing was. When I failed, I was able to really like deconstruct like what I did, what happened, and how I can make it better. Okay, check. So accept failure, use those lessons as a foundation for your success. The K is kill mediocrity, go for it.
That's a great one too. I just want to touch on that one real quick. Maybe I'll chime in just with the, like, there's a great book that I read called U Squared, YOU to the second power. It's one that I take out with me in my morning thinking time. And I've read it, I think probably about 1,000 times. I've maybe mentioned it a couple of times. U Squared, YOU, and then the number 2 by Price Pritchett. And one of the things that he says in there is failure is a resource. It helps you find the edge of your capabilities. Right. And so really, like, you don't know until you fail, you don't know. Right. And then you live, some people live with regret, right? Like never knowing. Right. So even if you fail, at least you know that you tried, and you're not going to live your whole life looking back, wondering, oh, I should have done that. I should have done that. And then you, like you said, you learn, you grow, everything is a stepping stone. So I love accept failure. We've probably heard people say failure, look at failure as a learning experience, and that's great as well. But actually accepting it, acceptance is a big thing too. So I really love that.
Yeah, I mean, I was talking to someone one day about it, and they were like, most people try to hide their failures. I take my
Right.
failures and I mount them on the wall. If you see like plaques or anything behind me, like every one of those, that was a tremendous amount of failure that eventually turned into success. So I put my failures on the wall as trophies. I mean, you could even use Michael Jordan or Thomas Edison. Thomas Edison figured out more than 10,000 ways to not create the incandescent light bulb. How many times have we
Right.
quit after doing something one time or failing 10 times? Like most of us don't have that tenacity, that perseverance to continue going, because we know what's at the end. We were like, okay, maybe it wasn't meant to be. It absolutely is meant to be. You just have to keep going and find out what the right thing is.
Love it.
So that's accepting failure. K is kill mediocrity, because we're surrounded by mediocrity every day. And when I give this presentation from stage, I show a picture of what we call drown proofing in SEAL training, and it's where we're tied up, hands are tied behind our back, our feet are tied together, and there's a whole series of events that you have to do. You have to be very comfortable in the water, and then it's basically water survival. And I go through the whole process of like what that looks like, to include like exhaling all the air out of your lungs to sink to the bottom, to bounce back up, to doing flips and things like that underwater, swimming underwater or swimming tied up. And if, I say that if you're even 1% mediocre here, if you're not 100% committed, whatever that 100% is for you, you're not going to make it. And so we should be like that in everything that we do in our life. Just be 100% committed to it. And, unfortunately, we're surrounded by mediocrity every day. I say that we're at war with mediocrity. How easy is it to not get sucked into like scrolling social media or finding excuses to not work out or not attack your goals for the day? Super easy to do. And so when we do that, we become mediocre. And when we become mediocre, we quit on ourselves, and we quit, and it's a snowball effect. And so what I tell people is, if you want to kill mediocrity in your life, is you have to compete in small things, compete in kindness, compete in generosity, compete in gratitude. And once you learn to compete and win in those small things, then start competing against your ego, because your ego knows exactly what to tell you to make you quit, to make you mediocre. And so if you want to change your life or the other people's lives, the people around you, you just have to have an uncommon desire to kill mediocrity. And
love that.
And so and then that rolls into the E. So it's never quit, accept failure, kill mediocrity. E is expose your fears. And I don't mean lions and tigers and bears. I mean that fear that lives in the deep, dark part of your brain. I look at fear to be like a vampire. Vampires, they live in the darkness and they suck the life out of you. And fear is exactly the same thing. It lives back there. I mean, really, what is fear? Fear is the anticipation of something that will probably never happen. But we let it control our life, and we let it suck the life out of us. And so when we have those fears, I say, go do something that scares you. Maybe you had, you were bullied as a kid, you have low self-esteem, go take a Brazilian jiu-jitsu class for a year. You're going to learn a skill. You're going to learn to defend yourself. You're going to find new friends, and you're going to have better self-confidence. And because you're going to be forced to fight someone every night you go to class, but in a safe environment. And you're going to build, that momentum. There's small victories. You're just going to continue going. You're going to build that self-confidence. Maybe you have a fear of public speaking. I have a fear of public speaking. But I get on stage and I do it. I created a couple of different keynotes to give on stage that are, I believe, impactful and help other people. This is actually one of them. And so I get in front of people and I speak. I'm much more comfortable in a gunfight than I am speaking to people on stage, because I've been trained to do that my entire life. I haven't been, speaking on stage to a bunch of strangers, weirdly, is like more stressful than like I could be standing in front of 400 people that work for me and I could just put out the word. But it's very different, because you don't want to stand up there and mess up, and like you get one shot at success and or making a first impression, and you don't want to mess that one up, because maybe they can turn into coaching clients or something like that. But so I just make sure that I'm prepared when I do that, but I'm still afraid. And I'll even say that on stage. I'll say, hey, by the way, I just want to let you guys know that I'm more comfortable in a gunfight than I am public speaking. So if I mess up or I stutter or whatever, so it also humanizes me, because I understand that, my background can be a little, people are like, oh, you're not scared of anything because of what you do. I'm like, well, that's not exactly true. So I think I think that's very helpful that I do that, but I'm exposing my fear and kind of putting it out there. I'm doing things that scare me. So I always
I
trying
love
to
that.
improve
Yeah.
myself. Go ahead.
Right. And some key things, and they all kind of relate, like the confidence thing, right? Is like, and practice and having a, there's the book Mindset that talks about growth mindset versus fixed mindset, where so many people have a fixed mindset, it's just like, oh, that's just the way I am. I'm not good at that. I can't do that. Or they have fears, right? That's actually just a fear when they're saying that, right? Versus a growth mindset is like, I can get good at anything if I put in the time and practice and learn, right? And when you put in the time, like you said, you could be the worst fighter, get bullied your whole life and not know how to fight or do anything. But if you go to, Brazilian jiu-jitsu for a year and practice, 3 times a week or more, or whatever it is, then next thing you know, you're going to build the confidence. You're going to take the actions. You're going to put in the work. Next thing you know, no one's going to mess with you. And it's funny because the Brazilian jiu-jitsu guys that I know too, they never act like a super aggressive. They're not starting fight. They're never starting a fight. You don't want to start a fight with them, that's for sure. But they're not starting it. They're very calm and composed, and yeah, it's very cool.
Yeah. So I like that a lot. And I do things that. So I hate swimming. I'm not really
Mhm.
afraid of it, but I hate swimming. I hate running. And so part of this Grand Canyon challenge, there was a lot of workup. And to get the miles I needed to run just for time's sake. And my body is broken down after 26 years of service. I have no cartilage in my knees. I'm broken, but I had to get out there and run and do all the things I didn't like. I also do a fundraiser swim across the Hudson River every year. I didn't do it last year because I was climbing the Grand Teton, another man-made event. But it's a fundraiser. It's about 3 miles. We stop in front of the Statue of Liberty and Ellis Island and at the 9/11 Memorial to do push-ups and pull-ups for 22 veterans a day and doing hard things. And I hate swimming, but I go and I do that and I train for it because I don't want to fail while doing it. I want to be successful and people are watching and but it's very easy to not do it. Very easy to
Yeah, it's
but I have to keep pushing that self, keep exposing those fears and keep moving forward.
this is a thing. This is such a key aspect to anything, is like, people think like, oh, and for me, like in terms of like, I do like going to the gym. So people are like, oh, it's easy for you. You like going to the gym, but like you, like, I hate running, you know what I mean? But like, doing long cardio sessions or whatever. Right. And so like, but I realized recently, like, hey, I got to force myself to do this stuff. Like,
Yeah.
and I heard a great quote recently, and it was like, don't do what you feel like doing, do what you know is right.
Yeah.
Right. Don't do what you feel like doing. Do what you know is right. Like, people know, if you're 40 pounds overweight, you need to exercise. You may not feel like exercising, but the right thing to do is to go exercise and to eat healthier and do things like that. And so if people could adopt that mindset of like, hey, it's not just about, oh, I don't feel like doing it or this and that. You got to do what you know is right. You got to do hard things. You got to be willing to fail, put one foot in front of the other. So this is awesome. Yep.
Yeah. 100%. And so one thing I like to, also very different way of exposing your fears is one of my friends. He's in the billionaire category. He still has stresses and anxieties and those fears that, pop up when he's driving along in his car. And so what he'll do is he'll pull over. He likes to say that fear does not exist on paper. And so what he'll do is he'll pull over and he'll stop at a Starbucks and order a small coffee, and he'll pull out a pen and a piece of paper because there's something that happens when you write something down physically rather than type it into your phone or something like that. And he will write down, he'll basically do a brain dump. Every one of those things that's bothering him, those stresses, those anxieties, those thoughts, those negative thoughts, write them down and read them back to himself. And then, like, if you try this, you'll see, like, you'll look at it and you'll say, wow, that's really what's bothering me. So basically you've exposed the fears. Mark Twain once said, courage is the resistance of fear, the mastery of fear. It's not the absence of fear. We all have fear. So if you want to, live a life free of fear, you have to expose your fears. Then you'll control the fear, and the fear will no longer control you.
Nice.
And so,
love that.
So it's never quit, accept failure, kill mediocrity, expose your fears, and the D is do the work. We going back to mediocrity. It's easy to get sucked into social media and all sorts of other things like that. But if you so we have this sort of instant gratification mindset nowadays, and we think if we do it once, we're good enough. You go to the gym and you should have all the results that you think you want. You know, you go to the gym once and you think you should have lost 40 pounds or something like that, and it just doesn't work like that. It takes time, effort, and tenacity. And you know, there's a saying that says Rome wasn't built in a day, but I guarantee it was built every single day until it became an empire. And so
Nice.
that's the thing that you have to do. If you want to build your Rome, if you want to build your empire, it takes every single day. It takes those small victories. It takes never quitting. It takes accepting failure. You have to continue to do that work. And you know, when I retired from the SEAL teams, or actually no, when I graduated from SEAL training, I thought all the hard work was done. And I couldn't have been more wrong, because when you show up at the SEAL teams, they don't care anything about what class you were in, how long you were there, how old you are, how good you were. They care about what you're doing today. What are you doing today? How well are you doing today? You're expected to perform every day better than you did yesterday. And that's why they say the only easy day was yesterday. But you have to do the work, and you have to build that empire, and you have to create those small victories to get there. Again, if you look at like the end goal, whatever that is, you can become overwhelmed, but you just have to show up every day and do a better job. Just be 0.00001% better than you were yesterday. And if you're not, another great thing about being in the SEAL teams is you're going to hear about it very quickly. Your peers, your juniors, your seniors, they're going to say, what's going on with you? Why aren't you putting out? And so there's built-in accountability that I think we all need in that environment. So, you know, like I said, when I retired from the SEAL teams, I felt like I lost purpose, mission, and team. So now what I do to have that accountability is I have what I like to say I'm building my new SEAL team. I'm new people around me that I trust. You know, who is it? Jim Rohn said that the 5 people that you surround yourself with will determine kind of really who you are. And so I make sure that the people in my inner circle, my new SEAL team, are people that are going to hold me accountable, but they've also given me permission to hold them accountable. And most of them are so much more successful than I am, but I also have a different perspective on life and things. And if I see them slacking, I will call them up and be like, yo, what's going on over there? How you doing? I feel like, do we need to bury some bodies out in the desert? Like, what's going on? Do we need to, you know, kind of joking. So that kind of breaks the ice a little bit, especially when they're, you know, performing at this level. And I'm like, you know, I'd like to be at that level, but I see them slacking. I'm not going to let you slack, even if you're a higher performer than me, because because I want you to hold me accountable as well.
Yeah, that's so important. It's so important. And you mentioned you're part of like this other men's group, right? I'm sure you guys hold each other accountable there. I'm the same way. I'm in multiple different, you know, mastermind groups, peer groups, you know, have multiple coaches at any given time. And you need people to hold you accountable, like you said. And I think a lot of people don't have that. A lot of people don't invest in themselves, whether it be through coaching or you know, different peer group programs or things that you know, someone who will hold them accountable. So I highly recommend anyone listening right now, you know, find someone that's willing to hold you accountable. Whether, you know, if you don't have money to afford, you know, coaching or some expensive peer group or something like that, get an accountability partner and make a commitment that you guys are going to hold each other accountable, and, you know, talk about what you're going to do, you know, every day or every week or whatever your goals are, and have them hold you to it. And it makes a huge difference just having that.
Yeah. And it also helps you like figure out what your purpose is. I talk to so many people and like, I don't know what my purpose is. I don't know what the next thing is. I'm like, well, you're not going to figure it out overnight. You just have to continue to work and try new things and be okay failing at new things. And you'll eventually get where you are, because the things that I'm doing now, 4 years ago, I said, no way. I'm not going to be in sales. I'm not going to be, you know, one of those guys that speaks on stage. I have no message. I certainly wouldn't be some sort of coach in any capacity. What do I know about anything? Well, those are the 3 things that I wake up every morning and I can't wait to do.
Yeah.
All 3 of those things.
Exactly. Yeah, that's great. That's great, man. Well, yeah, this has been great. I do want to touch on, I know we don't have too much time left, but I want to have you talk about CBD. I know you have a CBD company, right? So, you know, I know it's helped you tremendously. I know a lot of people have heard about CBD over the years. I was always sometimes confused, like, is this a right dose of CBD? Is this a potent CBD or a not potent CBD? These guys, there was, you see them selling it everywhere, but you don't know, like, is that a good one? Is that a bad one? Is there a difference? Like, so maybe you can educate the lay person here who might have heard of the benefits of CBD. You kind of talked about what it did for you, and all the benefits it had for you. But yeah, tell us a little bit, educate us on CBD.
Yeah, so CBD it's an interesting thing. So CBD, it's just a molecule in the hemp plant, cannabis plant, whatever you want to call it. The Farm Bill of 2018 made hemp legal, which made CBD legal. So CBD comes from the hemp plant, which basically is the cannabis plant that has 0.3% or less THC in the plant, and over 120 different minor cannabinoids and terpenes, which work synergistically with the body to help the body do the things that it needs to do. And the reason that I believe the reason that CBD has kind of taken off, and it's a very saturated market right now. And I would say you do still need to be pretty mindful about what products you're using or what companies you're using. There's a lot of companies out there that are maybe not as ethical as they should be, and maybe they just don't know. I'm not really sure. I don't know them that well. I'm not casting stones, but when I came into the industry, CBD was a modality that helped turn down a noise in my head. It helped, with some of the chronic pains that I suffer from my time in the military, with, chronic inflammation. I heard that before I tried it, I'd heard it helps with like certain kinds of epilepsy. It helps with pain, helps with sleep, helps with, different kinds of stresses and anxieties. And I was like, I probably need some of that to stop drinking so much. And
yeah, seems like it helped you cut down drinking a lot, which I think is a big thing, right? And a lot of people, of people like need drinks. Like for me personally, I'm very sensitive to alcohol. I haven't drank in over a year, just because I literally, every time I would drink, and like, I sometimes wish I had a better tolerance, because I want to, when I go out with my wife on a date or something, sometimes I'm like, I'd like to have a couple of drinks, but I just think about how I'm going to feel the next day, and how I'm not going to be able to go to the gym, and how I'm not going to be able to do the things I want to do. And so I just gave up entirely. But for a lot of people, they've been doing it for a long time. They have a family history of it. And they, people need a few drinks every night, to wind down and get to bed. And it's really bad for your health. Like, let's just be honest.
It's one of the worst things you can do to your body. And I've done some damage to my body. It doesn't mean that I've completely stopped drinking, but I would argue that it's probably cut my drinking down by 80+%. And so just to kind of go into like the bro science of CBD, because I'm not a medical professional, it's not medical advice, blah, blah, whatever that other stuff is. And I'm not making any claims here. I've just, talk anecdotally about my experience and what the actual science says. So all mammals have what's called an endocannabinoid system. It's a giant neuroreceptor system in the body that's connected to every other system. I mean, if you think about your central nervous system, your respiratory system, your digestive system, your immune system, it's connected to every system in the body. And the reason that CBD seems like it's this weird panacea that cures everything, first of all, CBD doesn't cure anything. It does help with chronic inflammation and things like that, but it's not a cure, it's a modality. And so your endocannabinoid system, you make endogenous cannabinoids. And the way that we found the endocannabinoids, the way the endocannabinoid system was found is scientists were trying to figure out what are the medical benefits of THC. We don't really know what it's doing inside the body. So they put a radioactive isotope on a THC molecule and gave it to a person. And then they followed that isotope as it traveled through the body. And that's how they found the endocannabinoid system. It's really new science. I've talked to many doctors and they're like, they didn't teach anything about this in medical school. But now in all the continuing ed stuff that they're doing, they're learning more about this endocannabinoid system. And so basically, if the endocannabinoid system is out of balance, you have some other system that's out of balance, it'll pull everything else kind of out of whack because everything is connected. And CBD feeds the endocannabinoid system. I call it like a super multivitamin, and it helps bring that system back into homeostasis because your body creates natural endogenous cannabinoids that feed that endocannabinoid system keep it in balance, but sometimes you don't have enough, or you have so much chronic inflammation, like the body is just out of whack. And CBD is just something that helps bring everything back into balance, back into neutral, back into homeostasis. But for
Right, yeah.
for
And to be
me,
clear for everyone listening, I think you mentioned it, but if not, like, this is not, weed. This is not THC. You're not getting high off of like the CBD. You're not, getting paranoid or having visions, or, there's none of that.
right?
So yeah, it's just, I mean, how would you explain the feeling of it when you take it?
I would, you don't feel anything.
Right,
I mean, you don't feel anything when you take vitamin C for a cold, or echinacea,
right,
or vitamin D, or
right,
creatine. You don't feel anything by any
right,
protein powder. You don't feel anything then, maybe some fullness.
mm-hmm.
Some people are very sensitive to CBD. There's a handful of people that I know, and they can take a small amount and it makes them kind of drowsy, but you can also take a small amount and it can give you energy. So CBD kind of works on this. If you like photobiomodulation,
Mm-hmm.
red light therapy, things like that. You can stand in front of these red light panels in the morning and it helps wake you up. You can stand in front of those same red light panels at night and it helps create melatonin in your body and helps like calm everything down, and you go to sleep. So CBD kind of works similarly in that it gives your body what it needs. But so we've got a bunch of different products at Naked Warrior Recovery, and so there's three different main categories of CBD out there. There's a full spectrum product, which has some amount of THC in it. Then but it also has all the other minor cannabinoids and terpenes and things like that again still are good for the body. They help the body kind of work synergistically. Essential oils, terpenes are essential oils. There's huge companies that sell essential oils, and because they do have these healing effects. One of the effects that one of the terpenes in CBD, it's called pinene, like the pine plant, pine tree, that like that extract. It actually helps with neuroplasticity, and it has been shown neuroplasticity is a good thing, especially for people with TBI issues, so that the brain can like rewire itself when you have like dead gray matter and things like that. So those are some kind of other benefits. Again, not medical advice. It's just sciencey stuff that I can talk about.
Yeah. I had a friend who used to be a boxer. Actually, a guy I met through a group, and he used to be a boxer, and he swears that CBD just was a complete game changer for him, for his head injuries and things like that. And really, really incredible. So that was full spectrum. It includes a little bit of a tiny small amount of THC. You're still not going to get high or anything like that. Most people,
correct.
Right? Okay.
And then the next is a broad spectrum, which is 90% of the products I sell. You still maintain most of the minor cannabinoids and terpenes, but we remove that molecule THC because some people just have an issue with it. That again, Nancy Reagan, war on drugs, just say no. And you don't want that. They don't want that. A lot of companies still are doing drug testing, so those are good options for those people.
That's good to know. So a full spectrum CBD could potentially show up on a drug test, even potentially.
It could, depending on how much you take and things like that, how your body processes CBD. You mentioned like dosage earlier, and dosage is dependent. It's not a pharmaceutical. I take probably 200 milligrams or more a day of CBD just because that's kind of what I need. Other people can take 10 milligram gummy and they're good to go. So it's just different for everyone.
So the broad spectrum, you should be safe in terms of it. It shouldn't show up on a drug test or anything like that if it's a broad spectrum. Cool.
Correct. And then the last, which is I would consider the lowest quality, is a CBD isolate. So they basically isolate the molecule CBD and throw away the rest of the stuff, and it just turns it's a white powder. And then they just add that to an olive oil or an MCT oil or a hemp oil. And so you'll know that because it's like 5 million milligrams of CBD, and you're like, that's probably, I don't need any of that. As far as like dosage,
that's a great distinction. I didn't know that. So CBD isolate is I want to pretty much stay away from. And then you have full spectrum and broad spectrum, which are going to have the best results. And if you want to avoid any THC at all, then go for the broad spectrum. Is that right?
Correct.
Perfect. Awesome.
And so when it comes down to quality, I would make sure, based on my experience and all the research that I've done, is the suppliers that I use really drove the standards in the industry. So if you think about the biggest names that you could think of CBD, most of them, actually none of them were doing what we started doing. And basically you extract the oil from the plant and you send it off to a lab to be tested. Okay, it's got, make sure it doesn't have heavy metals or any other toxins or pesticides or anything else, because hemp is a bioaccumulator. It pulls all the good stuff out of the soil and all the bad stuff out of the soil, and all that good and bad stuff goes right into the oil. It's in the extract. So make sure that there's no bad stuff in there. And then they turn it into an oil, they turn it into the product, and then they sell the product. But they never tested the product after they created the product. So there can be things that happen in the manufacturing process. So we would test the oil in the beginning, and then we would test the final product. Number one, to make sure it says what we say it has in the bottle. It has at least the amount of CBD we say it hasn't. Generally, we shoot for about 10% more in the actual bottle than what we say is on there. And also to make sure that nothing happened in the manufacturing process, because things do happen, and then you have to scrap the whole batch, which it just is what it is. When you focus on quality, you focus on quality. So every batch, and I've looked at other people's websites that they're like, hey, we're using this product or that product, and I'll look at their website and they'll have lab results, but it's for a product that they don't even carry. So every single batch of CBD that we create, the lab results are on our website, or you can just go on there, you order something, and you can scan the QR code and look at the batch. Every batch gets tested. So it doesn't,
Amazing.
you can buy from me or you can buy from somewhere else. Just make sure that they're doing their due diligence and they're testing every single batch. And then
that. That's
kind of
good, man. And that's the same thing. That's the same thing we do at Peak Performance. We test every ingredient when it comes into the facility, and then we test everything after the final product is made as well, to ensure that it's safe, to ensure that it has what we say on the label, and everything meets exactly what the label claims are. So that's the right way to do it. Unfortunately, a lot of this industry is not really regulated. People don't have to do that, and if they can go cheap and save a few bucks and make more money by not doing it, a lot of people will. And I have there's a lot of people that sell on Amazon. I know CBD, I don't think you could sell on Amazon, but a lot of my products, that I sell, competitors, they're selling on Amazon. They're not testing their stuff. So I think, it's really, really important to do what you said. And what's the website? Let's give people the website as well, where they can get some.
Yeah, the website is nw-recovery.com or nakedwarriorrecovery.com. I originally made it Naked Warrior Recovery, and then I thought, maybe people don't want to write naked in their search engine. Not sure why, just an epiphany I had. So I went and got nw-recovery.com. And so either one of those works. But I just want to touch on the THC side of it also. Sure. I'm completely opposed to THC just because of drug testing and whatever, and drugs are bad and whatever. But I do have a product that has 5 milligrams of THC and 25 milligrams of CBD. And I'll tell you, that has been a game changer for me, especially when it comes to sleep and turning down that noise. And because my brain is always going, I'm like, it never turns off. And I'll say that has really had a huge impact on my drinking significantly less. Because you do get a little bit of that booze kind of buzz. I have no idea. I've never smoked a joint or used THC outside of the products that I use. And the other thing is THC and CBD are kind of antithesis. THC goes in and it binds to those neuroreceptors in the brain. CBD actually goes in and unbinds those THC molecules from those neuroreceptors. So it'll actually bring you back down. So
it's taking the edge off, right? It's like what people are using instead of alcohol, taking the edge off. They're taking the edge off this way. It's way healthier than alcohol.
And you have no hangover. I actually had a buddy of mine use it. He took 2 of the gummies and he was like, oh man. And then he was like just super mellow. He went on a trip, and by the time he got where he was going, he was like good to go, like completely worn off, and he was able to operate and work at capacity when he got there. So I was like, oh, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing.
Exactly. And you're not smoking, so you're not causing the damage there. You're not drinking alcohol, which causes damage. So I think it's great, man. And highly encourage people to to check out your stuff. William, I know, I want to be respectful of your time, but I really appreciate you coming on here, man, and sharing all your knowledge. We covered a lot of awesome stuff. We covered your five SEAL secrets. You told us about some great stories about about the SEALs and the challenges and things that you overcame and went through there. You educated us on CBD. I didn't know what was a good CBD and what was a not. Now I know. And I actually like kind of gave up on it because I didn't know what was what. So now I'm gonna check your stuff out and try it out, as I hope others do as well. And yeah, man, just really appreciate you, everything you've done for our country, everything you're doing now to help other people. And I want to thank you for your time and sharing your wisdom here today.
Thank you, sir. And if you don't mind, I would love to give a discount code to your listeners. So if you
Please.
at the website, if you just at checkout, if you do peak 20 PEAK 20, 20% off, you can use that pretty much indefinitely. So
Awesome. Peak 20. And the website again was nw-recovery.com or Naked
Yes, sir.
Warrior. Was it nakedwarrior.com?
Naked Warrior Recovery.
Nice. nakedwarriorrecovery.com or nw-recovery.com, and peak 20 saves you 20%, man. That's awesome. Thank you, William. Thank you so much for joining us. And yeah, hope to speak with you again soon.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Thanks for listening. And just a reminder, if you haven't yet tried any of our Peak Performance products, you get 20% off your first order. We have one of the largest selection of USDA certified organic superfood powders, as well as very high quality supplements. And you get 20% off your first order at buypeakperformance.com. That's www.buypeakperformance.com.